So, Quinten Weeterings, thanks very much for joining me once again on Hermitix podcast.
Third time, James. Looking forward to this.
Third time, and we are going to be discussing a short text from 1957 by Simone Weil called "On the Abolition of All Political Parties." I will link the text in the description below because it's free to access, and this is a text by Weil. It's sort of a radical political essay, originally written in 1943, shortly before her death. And it is ultimately a critique of a very blunt, very to the point critique of party politics. As per the title, they gesturing towards the abolition of all political parties. And we're going to try go through this textually, so from the start to the end of the text. Try not to jump around too much as we follow Weil's thought. So, Quinten, I guess you messaged me about would I like to chat about this text, just sort of out of the blue. So what was it about? I guess give us a little history of the text, but also what was it about it that you felt was worthy of a full discussion?
You already gave some of the introduction, James. That was perfect. So, Well wrote this in London in 1943, the year of her death, where she was really productive and she wrote a lot of texts. And these get a lot of attention. I'm under the impression of that there's a little bit of a resurfacing of Well, but already Well has been under the attention of the Hermitix podcast as well. So what we're going to add is just read the text itself because it's rather radical. And what I find funny to see is that a lot of people bring up Well for her tendency to mysticism, her sensitivity for religious and societal affairs, and they're not really following through on the radical text of Well that she presents here. So I find that funny. One of the things looking at the text is that there's a lot of additions with introductions or afterwards. I have one of the New York Review of Books, which comes with a text of Mivosh, himself an interesting thinker. But that is always a tell sign for me. When there is a text which comes with a lot of stuff, I'm like, what do they want to do with this author? And why cannot just people engage with this? Because this is fantastic. It's nice. You see philosophy at work. You see Well at work, the technique. Anyone can engage with this, be it people in high school or more studied. It stands on itself. However, James, from what I understood from you, I'm not doing you a big pleasure of bringing Well back up because you had some reservations.
Yeah, I mean, my reservations are pretty simple, but I do want to actually sort of reiterate something you said there before we go forward, because it's something I agree with, that when you do find these texts that often have introductions that are themselves longer than, I mean, this is only, I think if you were to actually have this in print, I think it's something about 40 pages or so. Often you have these introductions and afterwards and caveats that are longer. And usually it's a way for people to play it safe, to explain away the supposed danger. And I guess it would be such an introduction, not that I've read any. I've only read the one which is on the Anarchist Library, which is the one I'll link, which is free, very short translator's foreword. And really that sort of explain away large introduction would fit this text, because as Weil makes clear, political parties really are a sort of safety valve for people, to stop people really touching life, to stop that real individual engagement with, for her, truth and justice. And that is, we can kind of get to that in a bit, but as you said, you do me no favors reading it. I think it's a great text, and it's something close to my heart as someone who but people ask me this all the time, and I never want to say, but what am I aligned with? Well, basically anarchism. That's where my quote unquote politics would be, of a certain form. And my issue, as you brought it up already, is that as quickly as she moves away from parties, which are constraining people's thought, she immediately relies on basically two grand signifiers, which are truth and justice. And the big one for me that's the problem is justice, because that's entirely really reliant on a structure that she then she doesn't really articulate too well in the text. I don't think there's a lot of assumptions. But before we go, we get all the way to that, which is in sort of 2 or 3 questions time. What is a party for Vey? As we're talking about the abolition of them all, what is a political party for Vey?
Okay, yeah, that's what she starts with the essay. So let's
Yeah.
gonna try and follow through with it. I'm gonna give away a little bit of the end because she does conclude that the parties are part of the leprosy that is killing us. So I mean, she doesn't take any prisoners, Simone Weil, does she? And that's also interesting. So where you're coming from, she makes a clear distinction between parties in the Anglo-Saxon world and other parties. Well, we know Simone Weil, she was inclined to Christianity. She grew up in a family from Jewish heritage, but she didn't do much on her faith, and she didn't grow up like really being a Jew. She was very inclined to Catholicism. She didn't convert in the end. She starts this essay. Yeah, I don't want to introduce too much. I think you need to read 2 books to understand this. It's the Bible and Plato. That's what she plays by. So what is a party? She goes right in there, James. What is it? She comes from France. France brought us the revolution. France brought us the Constitution. But right away, she says that the party in the Anglo-Saxon world, they have an element of sport, and that is completely different. She describes it better in The Need for Roots, which is her big work, came out 1943. She was based in London that time. She was writing these texts for the Free French Army. However, Charles de Gaulle, we don't know if he ever really read all the texts. Probably not. It might have never really resonated with them. In The Need for Roots, she writes, "We all know that the parties in England have a certain tradition, spirit, and function, making it impossible to compare them to anything else." So she kind of excludes the English model, which I find fascinating because when we watch the English, we value you for your debating culture, your debating unions, the Mr. Speaker, all the symbolism. So Well takes that apart, because she's laying out the problem here for like how does Europe continue after the war? That's her main concern. She says, well, parties been formed after the revolution as a necessity, and page 2, she says, she does use a quote here from someone else. But however, she says that all those parties that they draw power to themselves, which makes totalitarianism the original sin of all political parties. I'm stopping there for a little bit. So the totalitarianism is something worked out by Hannah Arendt much later, but mentioned here. Hannah Arendt hardly ever mentions Well herself, which I found very fascinating. And Well, she doubts everything. She doubts both democracy and the Constitution, because for Well, they do not necessarily have to be good in themselves. The one thing she does bring up is Rousseau with his theory of the social contract. Thought that people have a contract with the state, and where Rousseau is really inclined to think that the people need to be free as possible. And Simone Weil goes from there, and she says, like, the general will, in the best instance in politics, what we see at work is the general will of the people. You're still with me here.
Yeah, still with you. Yeah.
Okay. She compares that to a mass of water. She uses quite some explicit comparisons.
Hmm. Well, I guess before we go marching forward, we can stop at this totalitarian angle and this sort of totalizing notion that all, as she says, all political parties have this totalitarianism inherent within them. As kind of a definitive aspect of a political party is that. So to take a few things from the text, which is where I start to have problems, even though I'm sympathetic of what she's saying. You know, her argument, the counter to political parties really begins with her saying the only legitimate reason for preserving anything is its goodness. Well, immediately, even though I've never really been into moral philosophy, the crux of her entire argument is reliant on her, she says, to repeat, the only legitimate reason for preserving anything is its goodness, which basically means the only reason for doing anything is to either create good or you might say, well, why have you changed what she said? Well, life moves and preservation is the creation or doing of anything. And so basically her telos for her entire telos is goodness, which sounds nice, doesn't it? But when what is her definition of goodness? And then she jumps quite quickly straight after this and says, the evils of political parties are all too evident. Therefore, so her entire argument is based off just this sort of one sentence of the evil of political parties are all too evident. Well, that's fine. I certainly sympathize. And she does sort of reiterate this later on with what I think is an interesting way of looking at it. She says, for instance, if instead of Hitler it had been the Weimar Republic that decided, through a most rigorous democratic and legal process, to put the Jews in concentration camps and cruelly torture them to death, such measures would not have been one atom more legitimate than the present Nazi policies. Yeah, that certainly makes sense, that in terms of goodness in relation to those actions of history, goodness in relation to that evil completely makes sense. But it's I don't want to really be a defender of political parties, but equally she's quite lazy in terms of what might have come from political parties, and the arguments that political parties would make would be exactly the opposite. Something like the League of Nations after World War II would be completely the opposite of this, that the purpose of them was to keep away evil and keep away war. And there would be people, such as Fukuyama at a certain point, who would say that we were successful at that for a short time. So for me, the actual argument falls flat very quickly because it's reliant, I think, on really a theocracy. We can get to that. But the actual criticism of what political parties do to individual minds is, I think, the far more interesting angle for me.
She does come to that. I think you're going a little bit fast here, James.
Okay.
Hold your horses. No. But it's good to structure the thought, both of us, because what she says is that you're right on the part of the theocracy. So what she says, the totalitarianism was the original sin. So already we're in the biblical realm here. If you talk about original sin, it only makes the more sense. Of course, you're going to talk about goodness, where she gives some characterizations of the political parties. First of all, that she says the collective passions should be done away with. Political parties cannot function in this realm of collective passions. And then, secondly, what she says, that the people should express their will regarding the problems of public life and not regarding other things, because what we live in now, a democracy, which is of course different already than the League of Nations, it's very institutionalized and bureaucratic, which makes the discussion go about a lot of things or technicalities, or it's distracted, and it's not about the soul of politics, to use a Weil word. I think it's interesting you bring up the League of Nations. and to think of the United Nations. So because, for instance, nowhere does she mention the human rights.
Mm.
The human rights is, she believes in the French Revolution and this esprit, the
Mm-hmm.
the spirit, so to say, of the French people, and she quotes Rousseau in this, but she doesn't take everything on board with this. But she is also different from the more classical critique on French Revolution thinking, so to say. But the especially the key part. Um, Wait, before she comes to the key part, one more thing. So she states all these conditions,
Mm-hmm.
that there shouldn't be any passions, and that people should speak about what is the soul, what is intended to be the soul of politics. And then she also says on the page, well, those criteria are never met. So she does admit here, James, that what she's writing, it is about something. So this is all initial shots. Shots are fired, but then she comes to this big divide, which you must have noticed as well, where she says there's the three characteristics of the political party. Even before she says the three characteristics, she says, well, the only solution for our political domain, for it to be better, is the abolition of all the political parties. Then she states the characteristics of the three political parties, and these become classic, so to say. One, it comes to the individual as well. One, a political party is a machine to generate collective passions. Two, political party is an organization designed to exert collective pressure upon the minds of individual members. I think you agree on this one. Mm-hmm. And third, what she says is the first objective and also the ultimate goal of a political party is its own growth without limit. Political parties are, so to say, a cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, do you want to just sort of focus on these three traits for a little while before we go forward?
I think we touch up on your objections as we go through it. This is my experience with how the essay is built up. I don't know, but
for you, okay. So going over these assumptions, this first one, there's sort of the collective pressure from a political party over individual conscience, we could say, or basically parties demand loyalty and conformity. We could say actually create conformity from their members. There's something certainly Foucauldian, I think, about this in a certain sense. Basically, that the individuals have to adopt party positions, and then even if they come in conflict with perhaps someone's personal judgment. Now, in a sense, and maybe there is the Christian individualism in the sense of being born in the image of God is behind this for Weil, which actually, as sort of pessimistic, I guess this seems at times, these criticisms are kind of hopeful and optimistic from Weil's point of view. Now, I would kind of again disagree with Weil here because, and she's making an assumption of the capacity of all individuals to really be able to do that. She's making, I would say, Christian assumptions regarding free will and everyone having a position, and assumptions regarding human nature that don't really seem to be quite true, really. It's sort of a very modern position to say that everyone will, because there's sort of a paradox of if you somehow remove, if you did absolve all political parties, that doesn't mean, let's look at Girard, another great Christian thinker on this, that doesn't mean that collective pressure is going to go away. So I wouldn't say that political parties are at best very good aesthetic vessels for collective pressure. They're concentrated places of collective pressure, but collective pressure is one place where I'd be hard pushed to disagree with Girard. Collective pressure is what it is to be a human being, and not always in a pessimistic sense. I mean, to have a relationship with others and be with the other is basically what it means to exist. So I would assume that she doesn't have a problem with collective pressure when it comes to agreements within the church. So she tries to, you know, that first point, she tries to say, well, it suppresses independent thought. Well, is there such a thing? Is there really such a thing as independent thought? I don't think there is. Everything builds off nothing's really original in that. I mean, nothing new under the sun, right? To quote scripture back at Weil. So that would be my problem with the first point. But it's a good split that we have here, and it's good. I know we're not using the video, but you're wearing white, I'm wearing black, and I've got the big devil mustache. So it's a really great split at the moment.
Yeah, we're ready to stab one another. So what Well says, taking some of your points on board, but she says that every party is totalitarian, and both potentially and by aspiration. She sees them as an evil, at best a necessary evil, but we already know she comes to the conclusion she wants to do away with all of them, because what happens in parties, regardless of what you're trying to say, and I think we're gonna get more through it once we plow through the text. But what happens in this process of the parties is that the means and ends they get reversed. The political party becomes an end in itself, and the people become means. And she also gives examples of how people behave in this text. It's very simplistic. I think it's effective. It's really unlike what I would do. Also, to keep in mind that Simone Weil was a teacher at some point. And then she also says that all the things generally considered ends are in fact by nature, by essence, means. One could cite countless examples: money, power, state, national pride, economic production, universities. She gives this summary of all these areas in society where we see a evil influence of politics. Where do politicians go? Where does Tony Blair go? Where does Richie Sunak go? Where do they go? Where do they come from? Where do they crawl from? It's a group, and we're not in it. It has an influence on universities. The second Trump administration is influencing universities in America.
You see this as a very early essay on the notion of elites.
I guess you could say that, because Simone Weil, to shed a little bit of background, she didn't bother at all, and I think this was something maybe that you personally thought. So she really restricted her food intake, and it's ultimately what got her to die as well. And Miłosz, who was an interesting thinker himself, who wrote an essay at the end of this. He gave the description: she lives a life of deliberate foolishness. And when it comes to the elite status of her thinking, of her philosophy, which is there prominent, it's evident that she is a great mind. It's not a surprise that she comes back into fashion, but she didn't take any prisoners. She just went for it. It's all rather edgy how it's described in the text, but that's why I found that summary so interesting, because if you follow her line of thought, that's where all the politics is, and that's where the influence is, and that's what makes it so inherently evil
in institutions.
Yeah. This is the critique which we see, and this is beyond the text. But every time when we hear like Trump goes to power, or democracy is at stake, or the liberal democracy is going down, it's going down. The liberal democracy as we knew it, as it was able to subsist, and I find it a fascinating sight. I'm just enjoying it, imploding. It is going down, and you hear all these libtards talking, oh, we have to protect the institutions and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it has nothing to do with it. Those are not at the core of political thought. And that's why I find this essay such a relevant tool to smack them.
What's at the core for Weil? What's at the core of political thought? Just that cancerous continuation.
The core was that she herself, as you know from her biography, went to work in the factories. Then later she found more peace working in the vineyards, in the fields. This was somewhere where she wanted to be with the people. And when we look at our politicians, they don't want to be with us. They are horrible people. They're awful. This Keir Starmer, he is the most estranged person I've ever seen. They are not with us. And they have no means to prove it.
Sure, but you're not answering my question. What's the core of political? What's the core
of political?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Is that she wants to be next to people. That's a place where she wants to be, and what she wants to have in her political thought, in her political system, is soul. And is rootedness, is soul, is attention, is a genuine spark which people feel towards another, and that is not there. People feel strange, and that's the whole, and that's the other trait. So the one trait, which is I think maybe inferior, is the one where people say, "Oh, we need to protect institutions. We need to protect the BBC, for instance." Whereas it's apparent that it's not functioning as it should be. But the bigger one even is the first thing people get called is you're populist. All of their outings are described as populist, and this is, I think, something Simone Weil wants to conquer, because to combat, because the way she looks at politics is a far more genuine way.
Well, you've used a lot of very vague words that I dislike. I don't dislike you using them. I just dislike the words. I didn't think we'd butt heads as much, but it's quite enjoyable. But you said that what Weil wants to do is to have a politics with that has soul, that is has a spark, that is more genuine. That's absolute nonsense. All those words could gesture towards absolutely anything. And I would say that when you scratch at any of those words, what you find is a fetishization of a certain historical aesthetic and a certain sort of folksy gathering. Because I would say that if you want to do that, then you're talking about quality, you're talking about something that can't really be spoken about. And politics, the word politics, is extremely literal. And those two are not going, they're just not going to ever, they can't cohere. It's grotesque, actually, when they cohere, because it's almost like, to maybe give a metaphor, it would be like, a charity drive that comes from a place of love, where you're feeding homeless people or feeding the poor, but then at the same time, someone's like worried about how much they're going to get paid, and it's very bureaucratic, and then the whole thing immediately transforms. So I think the literalness of politics, you can't have a politics of soul. It's absolutely incompatible, as much as I don't like the word soul, because I think it's just completely useless. But if you're going to gesture with one of those kind of words, then I don't think it works. And it ends up being quite lazy for me. Same with her gesturing towards, look, I don't particularly want to sort of go all guns blazing in a certain direction now that I've made it clear that I'm not a Catholic anymore. And I would have had a problem with this even back in the day. But if she's going to say the basis of goodness should be truth and justice, well, she needs to be honest, and she needs to say the basis of goodness is truth and justice as per the Christian understanding of it, which would be her Christian understanding of it, which to me just ends up with another form of, you're going to tell me what it is for me to be good, right? Which is another form of authority. Does she address that?
So what she does do, James, is she quotes scripture in this piece as well. I didn't see it as much in the English editions. For her, the criterion of goodness should be goodness in itself.
What does that mean?
Well, for someone who's Catholic, who's Christian,
Yeah.
who
Okay.
believes in the revelation, and
Right.
she
So I
for
think should be fair. I think she should be fair, and she should say Christian goodness in what do you say? Goodness is goodness in itself. That ripped out from religious foundations is a nonsense statement. She should just say Christian goodness as per scripture. I don't. Goodness as goodness in itself is a stupid thing to say.
as I read it, she does, because
Okay. Okay.
what she says before is one cannot serve both God and mammon. And mammon, as someone may know, is mammon was money in so you can't serve God and money, and that is quoted twice in scripture. It's quoted both in Matthew and in Luke. And what it says in Matthew before that, and maybe I can get you on my side for this for a little bit.
Save me from the fires.
um, what it says in Matthew right before this quote, and I think that this, this is exactly the persona that Weil was. What it says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And you not much more valuable are you not much more valuable than them? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And I would say, I hope you agree with me, Tim, that is very indicative for the position Well had in life and
Yeah,
towards
and
politics.
it was a stupid position.
Yeah, you can. Well, at least we agree with that. But this was her position, and you can find it nonsensical, and
Yeah.
obviously a lot of people found that there was a lot of people estranged
Yeah.
by her. But this is the way to understand her for
Okay.
me.
Yeah, sure. Okay, in that sense, then let
In
me.
that sense,
Okay. What
in that sense, she says that all
what
political parties
what
kill the sense of truth and justice in ourselves.
what section of Matthew is that again? Sorry.
Um, that is 625. It's also in Luke, where it's a bit of a strange.
Okay, so
It,
uh, so here's what I mean by there's a certain form of religious. Okay, so she's on the one hand, she is moving away. So, as you're saying, the foundation to understand Vey would be read the Bible, read Plato. So you kind of, and this is very, very late Vey, and you have to go in really to understand it from that position. But at the same time, I would push back on that because you're saying this is a radical political text that is written in such a way. She was a teacher, is written in such a way to be almost, it feels like a pamphlet, would you say? It feels like a political pamphlet. And I don't know what the first sort of textual form it really took and how it was appreciated. But what I would say is, okay, if on the one hand she is saying abolition of all political parties, and it seems in society that these political parties are the things that are guiding the economy, are guiding housing, are guiding extremely practical measures that mean that we're not hungry, that we're not in pain as per healthcare, whether or not you agree with them. If your alternative to that is to say to, I tell you what, go to the north of Britain and say to the family where the kids are hungry, I tell you, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about where you eat or drink. You're gonna get a sock round the jaw because it's a stupid thing to say without, and it's a silly thing to say without Vey's foundation of belief. I'm not going to take away from her clearly almost anomalous, almost and foolish in the like fool for Christ sense. Her foolish degree of faith. Right? She genuinely believed that. Fair enough. But I don't think you can comport that as almost like a theocratical policy for a non-political party, right? To say, well, what's your alternative politics? Read Matthew 6:25 and just don't worry about it. That to me seems like there's going to be a void and someone else is just going to come in and take over things. I didn't think I'd get this heated about this.
Oh no! But that's the whole point of it. We respect each other like that.
Yeah.
The Bible is full with stuff like that, and sometimes saving a one soul, can be the most important thing to do. There's a call. God calls you to action, and you may have to do that right away. God, what was I going to what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so why is this evident? Is because what we've seen in the whole Europe, James, is that in various countries, I say the Netherlands, Italy, Germany, there were these Christian democratic parties, and they've all imploded in some way, or that they've lost meaning. That there was a connection with this Christianity and to participate in the political field, and it hasn't worked. What we see at this moment, and that's why I think the text is very, very relevant. You have the upcoming of reform in England, which may be going to shake up the party system.
I don't think they'll go. I don't think they'll get in for what it's worth.
It questions it. It questions the way it is sorted now, but more so in France, where Macron boasted a whole party by himself. In Germany, with Alternative for Deutschland.
But these are all political parties, though. These are all even more concentrated extensions of this same political form. They're just crueler.
Exactly, and is that what we're going to get, or is there a momentum where we can discuss with those people and maybe have them overthink or restructure the whole thing?
No, there isn't. Look at case one, human history. No, come on, don't be so silly.
No, but don't describe this as a late well. I mean, she was in London. The whole Europe was in shambles, and that's what this text been written about, and that's what makes it interesting for that period, and that's what people after Well picked it up. People like T.S. Eliot, like Mivosh, like Albert Camus in particular. So these are not the least important people. The only thing I suggest is not to water it down, and to take it on face value. Maybe we can go a little bit more in the text. So
Sure.
what she poses in between the lines, not have to quote everything, but for her, the best politician is a politician that has no allegiance. Somewhere she says, like, there is a debate, and a person X is gonna talk like a communist, and a person F is gonna talk like a fascist. And for her, it would be ideal, which is maybe seems like a nonsensical idea, but this is what she poses at least. Okay. Her ideal would be for to have the politicians with no allegiance.
You really want me to reply to that?
I'm trying to take you through the
absolutely. I won't be too sarcastic.
No.
Okay, so politician with no allegiance, stupid idea. Well, completely incorrect idea number one. Okay,
and she this comes down to where she quotes Pontius Pilate, asking Jesus, what is the truth? Pontius Pilate, the eventual judge of Jesus, the Jesus-like figure, also on course. And the reply that Jesus has is, "I came to bear witness to the truth." So ideally, she would have people take that as an example.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Now, how can we demand that of our politicians? How can we?
For them to only care about the truth and to be non-affiliated.
Yeah. The only thing she really proposes in the text And I think it would be an unfair criticism to say she doesn't come up with something very practical. Because I think the abolition of political parties would be a very practical. I think we should do it right away. But
Well, I disagree with you there. I think the word practical is incorrect. I don't think you could absolve political parties via practical means, because the very definition of practice, ergo like functionality, ergo some collective action towards abolition of political parties, would itself be the exact same form. I don't think she realized she's talking about forms, right? The idea of, right, we're all going to get together and we're going to absolve all political parties. That is a complete paradox. The only thing that could maybe absolve it is just laughing, or some quality that is ridiculous, that is absurd, that is like going into a political debate and just starting painting something. I know this all sounds ridiculous, but you can't debate about that, because then you're subsumed into, I guess, mammon or whatever it might be. So and also the idea of demanding something of your political leaders, demanding them to be unaffiliated, is just that makes no sense. I'm beginning to think this might be my least sorry.
Okay.
So yeah,
I take that what you said, but in the meanwhile, what she also offers us is a very apt critique of how the system actually functions. There are no unsuspect members. Here again, she quotes scripture. It's not. I'm a Catholic. The funny thing in the Netherlands is that Catholics are not the ones known to know the Bible very well. But she also quotes that a crooked tree doesn't bear good fruit.
Yep.
The system as it works now, and come also back to the characterizations, where she says lastly is that all the political parties, they're destined to only be focused on their own growth. That's all that matters to them. It's a self-destructive system, and I do think one thing she underestimated is the way we shape our public domain, where it's become even increasingly harmful that it's come to be like this.
Like what?
And I do not much see the political party as the segregated part of itself, but just that it makes that it's able to decide and to influence so much in the economic field, in the academic field. It just draws too much to it. It excludes any possibility for a person, be us a little bit like Well or not, to move away from it. Mm-hmm. We're getting a bit heated, but she also writes about collective passions and about the opinions, that the only thing that people now care for anymore is to have an opinion, to either be for or against. There's no elevated discussion. There's nothing aristocratic about it anymore. And I don't see that changing within the current system.
My disagreement there, though, would be that sounds like something that the frustrated undergraduate in philosophy says when no one else at the party wants to talk about, what's the meaning of life. They just want to have a beer and enjoy life. And I don't mean to downplay that and actually put some disparate hierarchy in the sense of people who want to collective passions. So what I don't want to do is to say that people like they are somehow above, or people who are talking about philosophy are somehow above, and people who aren't interested in that are somehow below. But one thing, and this comes across in that, she says, oh, as you just said, only people only want to have for, opinions or for and against. The majority of people in life just want to get by. They just want to live their life with the hand they're dealt. Most people do not want to engage, and there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't anything wrong with that. This sort of strong arm trying to get people to engage on this level will just repeat exactly what has happened before, which will be people like Vey or other people who are a bit more charismatic saying their opinions and other people agreeing with them. There isn't going to be some absolute pure fragmentation where everyone somehow has a unique opinion, because if there is such a thing as the truth, as Vey puts forward that there is, then there is going to be coalescings around the truth of what helps towards hunger and pain. So I just think she's very, very confused. And also because she has this problem with democracy, which fair enough, I'm fairly critical of democracy. My point on democracy would be that people's statement on democracy is that it shouldn't be like it is. I would just say that clearly what we've had as democracy is what democracy is, right?
No, but let's go back a little bit there, James, because
Okay.
what you said in the meanwhile. So whether Well offers something that we can take as an example or not, leave that aside. Apart from that, what we have right now is those politicians, those commissions, those institutions.
Yeah.
Speaking out of our name, acting out of our name, and presenting the truth. I think last week you had a commission in Britain presenting the COVID research or what was it, the investigation, and
Yeah, I mean,
it should have been done and tackled.
You could take Brexit. You could take
Exactly.
the right to life. Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Is that form that is democracy? She's critical of it. Fine, but her alternative is very weak. It's extremely weak.
I think it's the only line on which we can think it ought to be, because there is no truth. There's a lot of truth saying going on, but there's no mechanism to actually. So why is it there in the first place? Is to act on the general will of the people, and there has not been acted in the general will of the people. The general inclination that people have of politicians is that they have a will of their own, and that's all what they care about. And whatever you the way democracy works, that you go to a polling station once ever so often, that doesn't seem to work. And the response is even the more.
So what's Vey's alternative?
Wales' alternative is that we should utter ourselves in the public debate, and what she presents is so she's talking about magazines. This was way before the internet, of course, and that people should have no affiliate and come forward in the discussion, and that's exactly what we're not seeing today, because in whatever domain, be it media or internet, there's no people who have no affiliation,
Because no such thing exists.
No,
there's no such thing as a non-conditioned human being.
Exactly, but there's not even anything coming close to it. We have Elon Musk being fined by the EU, and of course he's got his own personal interest. I mean, I cannot take that as the height. I'm thankful for the platform he's offering and the entertainment he's offering. But I think we ought to be better than that, and this text of Simone Weil supports me in that belief. Doesn't mean that
I think you should get together and form a party. You said an ought. I don't. That's the problem. Is as soon as you have an ought, well, you're the fascist here.
Mm-hmm.
We ought to. Why? What's your basis?
Yeah, it's funny because she even references that particular. Let me look it up. Where she even believes that a fascist and a communist could meet on the street and agree with.
Well, of course, the same thing.
Yeah,
and
same thing. And that's how she perceived it to be in that instance. which is hard for us to believe in this day and age. But that's how she came from it, and she still wrote that in 1943, going in years in the war. So that's why it was important to her. And also that there's another very and strange feature she offers us, and she says, the only argument to keep political parties is because they've always been there, and she says that that's not a good argument. We should just go ahead and abolish them.
Okay, but it's just such a what it is a fantastical leap that seems it's almost like saying nothing, isn't it? I'm sympathetic to abolishing all political parties, but I also almost do want to play devil's advocate for political parties, because a lot of people would say, well, who would build the roads, who would build healthcare, schooling, the entire edifice of what we call society or civilization, if you're in agreement with that, which I'm largely not, but that would be the defense, is that those all coalesce around that which we call politics. And I think she seems to at least overlook the fact that her consciousness of as being a modern woman would be at least in part infected with that original sin that she talks about. That the way in which she talks about this is arguably very functional, very political, as if it's sort of an actionable thing. So and really, as I think you'd agree, the problem is that her alternative is reliant on an institution based on faith, even though she didn't convert, but it would end up just being an institution. So for me, these kind of essays usually, even though they
I'd like to
wait. I just want to say one thing. These kind of essays, even though they purport to answer such a question, always overlook the key question, which regarding current political situation, is why is it we've actually ended up in this situation? It's not some conspiratorial thing. Yes, politicians are greedy, blah blah blah. We've ended up in this situation. I think it's no more complicated than the majority of people want to get by and enjoy the comforts that they have, and they want to survive. And a vast amount of human nature, or if you want to philosophize it, mimetic desire, is about coalescing into groups and the safety net of basically a sort of tribalism. And that means not stepping out and sticking your head up.
Well, she was the one to step out, and also the one to not care about her self-preservation. Neither when she was in the Spanish war. But where I wanted to interrupt you, where is that? Like, how did we get to this? It is not an institutional problem, James. It is a problem of the party spirit taking over the people and their honest deeds, and that party spirit becoming an end in itself, because that is the only way for people to persevere in that environment.
That's
a different matter.
No. It's a right matter, but it's just it's hypocritical with regards to how you understand people, because on the one hand, you say that the party spirit. What did you say? The party spirit overtook the people and their honest deeds. Yeah.
That is the core of the problem. It's not an institutional problem. It's a problem in the spirit of the minds of people, on how they act, and we should not tolerate this political.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, but this would be my issue, is that because within that statement, what you're saying is that on the one hand, the party spirit has overtaken people, therefore sort of possessed them, but on the other hand, the people are better than the party spirit, as if you're trying to take away their free will, which actually was in agreement with the party spirit. There's a lot of people who aren't in agreement with party spirit and are sticking their heads up. I would be someone who says, I don't agree with party spirit. But I also see that the majority of people just want to get by, and that they're coalescing into the party spirit. I don't necessarily see as a sign of weakness, as much as it just is the equivalent of banding with the stronger tribe. People don't like to, the people just want to get by. Doesn't absolve the party, these parties of the evil that they're doing, but equally the idea that you're suddenly going to transform the kind of people. Not there's anything again. Not I don't want to do superior a sort of judgment of superiority, but the idea that you're going to transform someone who can give themselves over to a party spirit and is a joiner, we could say, you're going to transform them into a not joiner. Well, that transformation is paradoxical, because the very transformation to transform them into a non-joiner means that they're joining the non-joiners.
I'll try to put it as simple as I can. I think the party system has become instead of aristocratic, it's become elitist, and it's becoming more elitist. And so where Simone Weil moves from is so it's not to do with tribalism. It's not to do with absolutism, where the French Revolution came from, but this Rousseauan concept of the general will, and that has always contained, of course, the outsider, the people that wanted to get by. So it always answered on the most immediate demands of the people, and we've become so accustomed to see our political field of interest swamped with arguments, with discussions that are of no immediate essence to what we're going on about.
Okay.
So I would use the text of Simone Weil to analyze the evil influence it exerts. And in a lot of them, and she calls that the passions, the collective passions, because as soon as the party begins to produce collective passions, and also the people that are joining in, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but there's not so many people feeling that are affiliated with political parties. There's not many people affiliated with workers' unions anymore. There's not so many people affiliated with,
because the passions, I mean, I guess to put it in Weil's terms, the passions succumb to entropy as much as everything else does. As you said, the affiliation, there isn't the kind of affiliation to political parties that you get when people used to affiliate with countries. All affiliations are dying. We're at the end of the cycle.
Yeah, we're at the end of the cycle, and the argument that we get for the accusation that we receive for being populist makes no sense at all. What on earth do you expect for people to become other than populist? I don't think the trope of populist parties and for them to be countered by other means of populism or effectiveness or bureaucracy, I don't think that works. It is going to succumb. And
the issue though with this form of, because I think you can subsume populism into the entire political spirit. That would be the party spirit. So it doesn't matter. This would be the critique of the party spirit, is it doesn't really matter what they agree with. The problem is that they agree due to collective pressure and not due to genuine agreement. So it doesn't matter what they agree with, because their agreement, in a sense, due to, as Weil's point, which is one of the better points, is her criticisms of political parties, is that collective pressure over individual constants, this sort of mimetic desire, causes people to form agreements that then bolster an evil to be able to do it. I mean, of course, the Nazi Party is the great example there, as are many other abhorrent political parties. They would say that they're all evil. So it doesn't matter what political party you agree with. The problem is the agreement, the form of agreement, because I agree because all these other people agree. It doesn't. That's the problem, and Vey is pointing that out.
Exactly. She puts it in.
So, Paul, it doesn't matter if it's populism or a Green Party.
Exactly. She puts that in front of the discussion. She says, if you want to be with a political party, and you'd say, well, I kind of like you for this, I still have to study the rest of the party program, and then maybe I will, maybe I will agree with the majority of that as well. Then the party policy would be to say, well, James, if you want to join us, but but think you only agree for 90%, we're not taking you. And she says, that is hurting, that is destroying the whole structure we built this on. That's exactly the example she's given, and I think you're right with her on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. No. She just doesn't have. It's written in such a way as if she's bringing along some grand, amazing alternative that makes any sense, and it doesn't.
From her position,
well, of course it does. Her position.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't see. She's completely blind to the fact that she has a position that is reliant on two massively free-floating signifiers that apparently absolve lazy philosophy, to be quite frank. Like justice. Let's just use justice. Just use one. I want. She's basically saying I want her alternative would be a politics based on justice. Okay. Well, don't we all? And then what my point is, ergo, or as why I pointed out the question of why do we end up with the state that why do we end up in literally the state that we are? It's because Vey's very question of, let's take the two things she uses early on in the essay. She wants, excuse me, I think, God is getting smited by the Lord.
He's getting back at you, Joe.
He is. Dear me. Let's take her two signifiers. She does say multiple times that she would want a politics based around truth and justice. That's going to end up with various people arguing what truth and justice are, and various other people coalescing around certain forms and understandings of truth and justice, transforming into parties. And I don't want that, but that's just how this happened as well. That's how we got where we are. So her alternative is just this long way round of saying like, oh, if only I could explain to you a good political system, and she doesn't. I didn't expect.
The party was never, of course, part of the make of this political system. Then the same goes with the representative democracy.
Right.
It was supposed to be there, but the representatives have come to represent a number of people and become very, very estranged. And there's certain decision making that's drawn to representative democracy, which ought not to be there, because in the beginning of the French Revolution, it would be people that would actively write their concerns, and they would be taken into consideration. Just the whole system got changed up.
This has been my point, though, is that is exactly still the same system we have. It's just the purpose of a system is what it does. So this isn't democracy gone bad. This is what democracy is, and most people are fine, and most people are fine with that. Because once again, you're going to get back to a problem, which was the problem for many communists and many other systems, which is the general system of most politics is you can't all have a say, and so then you coalesce to one person who represents you, and at some point or another, someone's a knobhead, and they take the power and do their own thing. That's just called being part of human life. My frustration is that Vey is coming across as if she has a genuine alternative to this that doesn't rely on the exact same form, and I just don't see it. As far as I can see, her alternative is that citizens should engage with as individuals who are concerned about the truth, and there's representatives who are concerned about conscience, and the political debate focuses on substantive issues, right, and not opinions, right, and public life is oriented towards justice and the common good. Well, who decides on all of those things? It's exact same process once again.
No, it is, the political parties do not serve our common good, and I agree with you.
Well, okay, fine. They're all gone. They're all gone. Here, okay, let's know. Thought experiment, which I hate. All the political parties are gone, Quinten. How do we decide or understand tomorrow what the common good is?
It'd be hard.
How do we do it? Do we get a representative from a community?
It's not what you present, because it's
What did she say? The Bible?
the Bible,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree
Look,
with...
I'm being a bit coy. I'm being a bit coy because ultimately, if you are a Christian, then basically all this is a sort of semi-anarchic, like
it makes perfect sense. The purpose of this,
and so does Das Kapital to communists, and so does I don't know, whatever, to fascists, and so does blah blah blah, right? Like if those are your axioms, if your axiom is the Bible, then there you go. If your axiom is Mein Kampf, there you go. If your axiom is Das Kapital, there you go. I'm saying you know, no, she just
but
yeah.
I don't take offense with the position. Well, for me, the analysis sits well, and the critique. She starts comparing it also with intoxicating drugs.
Absolutely, and I'm with you 100%. And it's the same as so many philosophers. Philosophers are amazing at description, but they're god awful at prescription. They are they're like the doctor who can tell you everything is wrong down to the atom, but the drug they give you is just their little own fantasy every time.
And I think that's exactly how we should read the conclusion of the text as well, because no, well, she comes down to where she says that that there is an intellectual leprosy going on. So she's not only using a sickness, but also leprosy, which has a biblical meaning. What you're well aware of, with Jesus preaching to the leopards. And that is the conclusion. The leprosy is killing us. It is doubtful whether it can be cured without first starting with the abolition of all political parties. So what she is indicating is a start. This is the venture. This is what we should take off from. We should not take as a given. Well, I'm saying should not here because I feel
sounds
enough.
But many people, and I would probably sympathize more with such people, would say that is an example of Baudrillard's concept of after the orgy. Yeah, we're gonna get rid of all the political parties. Now what?
Well, I would.
Okay, now what?
I don't think
I'm speaking basically as an anarchist here.
Uh-huh.
I'm all for it, but I'm also all for people not being hungry, people not being in pain, children being fed, and there is a system, however corrupt and however awful, there is some structure that is doing things. You wanna absolve that overnight and then just we'll just deal with it. Sounds like after the orgy thinking to me.
For Weil, what is important is the need for roots, and what she says about this party system that inevitably. She wrote a whole book about it.
Okay,
you're not gonna like reading it.
No, I'm not gonna like reading it.
And what she says is that this party system, it will inevitably, it will be a single party, and it will be totalitarian hell. And this party strife is just it's undermining us. It's undermining our dignity, and it's not what we should be having.
Okay. I'm with her I'm with her a lot, and I'm also where I'm with her. Where I'm not, which is also a completely meaningless statement, kind of one that she makes.
She also says that the people of the French Revolution, the 1789, would they look, again hypothetically, but if they would look to our system, it would seem like a nightmare.
I think this a lot. I think would Genghis Khan, would he look at modern day liberal Britain, and would he think something's gone wrong there? Do you think? Sorry, I'm being really sarcastic. There's nothing I love more than return thinking, and return to the French 78 is an interesting one.
No, it's a funny
Would
thing.
would the people from then have a problem with how we're living? They're dead.
Mhm.
And the people who are living now, seemingly the majority of them don't have a problem with it.
It's a funny thing. You go on the Genghis Khan. So, you know, obviously Simone Weil is trying to describe this modernist outtake for which the revolution was the starting point. So it's not as much as an understanding from of tribalism, and in a way even maybe Plato transcends tribalism, but from of that system. And the funny thing you say about the Genghis Khan, maybe a nice note to end this on is Charon, which we also had a discussion on. He once wrote an article, and it was titled, or it wasn't really an article. It was someone saying that he ought to have written an article which says it's an invitation for barbarians to take over this Romanian country as soon as possible, to just let them in, to let the hordes come over the walls, and an invitation to just shake it up and do away with this evil, which is the party system that we're succumbing, that we're suffering under.
Let there be a new party, yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
There would. There'd be something like it. Look, anyway, I think that's it. Look, go read it. Go read. I will put links for on the Abolition of All Political Parties by Simone Weil. My favourite philosophical text. Up there with the Myth of Sisyphus for me now, which I also don't like. I'll put that in the links below. But we've also previously, me and yourself, had a discussion on Charon, which I'll also put in the description below, and also a discussion on Bruno Schulz. And you've also just recently released a book of aphorisms in Dutch, I believe, right?
Exactly. It's titled Grosso Modo.
What does that mean?
It's an Italian term which we use a little bit in our language. So it's like more or less when you want to give an indication. So they are aphorisms on philosophy, on religion, and they touch on that. It was my debut this year, so it's been eventful.
Well, for any Dutch listeners, I will put that in the description below also. But Quinten Weeterings has been very fun.
It has been. Thank you so much, James.